A brief introduction to the project. The first thing you ought to know that it's a PPP project. So being a PPP, it took 4 years for the consortium to actually win the project. So when they won the project and the financial close when I first started in June 2011, some of the guys had actually been on the project for 5 years. So you can imagine when all that paperwork was pulled together, there was not even any indication whatsoever that they were going to do a BIM project. And that's quite important because the decision was made by one individual. And I've worked in projects all over the world, and you've found until the government mandates BIM, it is usually the decision of a visionary that's pushed BIM. Not the governments to start it off. That always comes downstream. Now, the project itself is 1.8 billion. Certainly not as big as the Shanghai Tower, I must admit. The hospital facility is 175,000 square metres. There's a big car park area of 76,000 square metres. It's the first hospital in Australia that has to meet the latest seismic conditions. That means after a 1 in 500 year earthquake, it has to be fully operational. It's the first hospital to have 800 single inpatient units. There's technology filled to the rafters. There's 40 technical suites with some MRI facilities. There's gardens and green courtyards because the hospital is built actually in parklands. That's the only way that it could get approval. It has, part of the process of designing the hospital, they've gone around the world to Europe and Scandinavia, going and looked at London and Barts. They've looked at all the technologies that are most advanced, and they pulled it all together in this particular hospital. There is an AGV system, an automated guided vehicle system, that actually travels around in the basement, and it's got its own lift and distribution system. It's also got a commercial precinct, a creche, mini-mart, restaurants and cafes. And it actually can cope with 25% in the emergency department. It can be able to cope with 25% more capacity than the current hospital. One of the challenges on the project is that the project team is all made up, but certainly the design team is mainly made up of joint ventures. And those of you who have worked on a joint venture, that presents its own challenges because it's about people working together. So all the design teams, Silver Thomas Hanley, Design Inc., they're the architects, that's a joint venture. Warbridge and Gilbert, KBR, structural engineers and civil engineers, that's a joint venture. Bestech and LCI, the engineering services consultants, that's a joint venture. The reality is, of those people there I've just mentioned, there was only one company that had actually used Revit before this project. So just think of that. A massive project, and only one of them, Warbridge and Gilbert, had actually used, well, I won't say it was BIM, it was Revit in a silo capacity. Because really there has been no BIM going on, or not much of it, or certainly none of it in the capacity that the challenges of this project. Spotless are the FM providers, and SA Health Partnership are obviously our client. The only thing I'm going to say about Spotless is that as the FM provider, they hadn't heard of Kobe. They have chosen a system which doesn't accept any Revit data. It's the most traditional of FM systems. There's no strategy there of how they're going to take the data at the end of the day. And so they're all on a learning curve. The client's on a learning curve. So the last 2 years, I've been continually educating all the parties that's on the project. The contractors these are the key contractors that have come on board in the last year. Most of them have been involved with the project for some considerable time. And they're starting to add value to the project in the sense that adding the coordination into the design rigor. And these contractors have actually been brought on board at basically the end, during stage 2, or LOD 200, to actually assist the consultants with the detailing and the coordination, to actually take ownership of the design at stage 3 and actually produce the LOD 300 details that then become the installation drawings. So there's a bold step there to actually take on board what Stephen was talking about this morning, early involvement with the supply chain. And that's a key important part. The technical challenges. This is a very, very simple site model that we've created for our field BIM system. And the only reason I show it because it clearly demonstrates some of the technical challenges. If you look at the different colours here and the segments, these are sectors, and there's 19 sectors across the whole footplate. The reason why they're split up like that is that where these blocks all join, there's a seismic joint. Some of these sectors here are 10 stories. So just one of those sectors are a project in itself. So technically, it's a very complex project. It is stuffed with services. I'm not going to read out all these things, all these challenging facts. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. As HYLC is a joint venture, it's an SPV, half the staff are employed by Hansen Yuncken and half the staff are employed by Leighton Contractors. It will only do this one job. So that's quite a challenge in itself, because bringing the two companies together, there's always a question of, process and, expectation that you have to deliver, have to deal with. We've had over 450 user group meetings closed out in 14 months to actually establish what the client wanted. The unfortunate thing is that nobody educated the client's representative of what the actual bid was agreed that we were going to deliver. So they wanted everything next to each other and twice as much as what they had in the bid. So it's been an interesting 14 months. Obviously, from the point of view of construction contractors, we've already got 20, the concrete's coming out of the ground at a rate of knots. We've got 20 construction contractors, and there's 14 services and ICT contractors alone. Now, one of the interesting facts here is that with the contractors coming on board, I reckon that, looked at up the other day, and we've got about 220 Revit base models on the project, which we're managing on a weekly basis. We've issued nearly 14,500 drawings to date. We've got 102 shop drawings, which is really early, but that's already, we're at that stage. We've issued 1,200 3D models around the system. We've received 4,800 state comments. And just in the architect's Revit models alone, we have acquired 202 Revit to SQL database tables. Because what you have to start realising is BIM is a business process. It's about managing data that will be handed over to the client at the end of the day. Forget at the moment that most clients don't actually understand what they're going to do with the data. I'll explain that a little bit more. But we have at the moment, in those just the partition models that the architects handed over, 172,000 objects of FF&E. We have in those partition models overall nearly 400,000 items. And we're managing this data on a weekly basis. Why are we implementing BIM? Well, because we realise that the project, because it's a PPP, everything's happening in parallel. The programme was set up to deliver basically 2D drawings, because that's what the client wanted at the beginning. We had to try and improve the process. We had to stop reinventing the wheel every time we do it into a different stage. It had to be, the model had to evolve. And that's what BIM has been trying to do. Also, the reality is that in the construction industry, you're not important unless you've got a pile of drawings on your desk. So we had to actually change that process. We had to actually put a process behind the data that actually people could understand. I'm not saying that they actually stuck to it, but the fact that there was a process there in the first place. How many times have you heard this? We will sort it out on site. When the client actually pays the consultant to do a fully coordinated project and provide him the fully coordinated details. I know this image is photoshopped, but there are realities that bridges have not met in the middle. There are realities that buildings have been built in the wrong place. I've spent 25 years actually working for contractors and clients and actually putting the jobs right once they've gone to construction and not having the right time to do it. So that is a challenge that we all have. We realised also that the fact this project's being done in Adelaide and the amount of resources that we were going to need for this project, there was going to be a skills shortage, whatever we were going to do. Hence, probably why I got the job. But at the end of the day, people have actually been flying in, and there's been a multinational team on that project. But equally, there's been a large contingent from Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and people have been resident there over the, during the project. But the reality is it's also the skills that we've actually got. It's those skills actually recognising the processes that we've put in place. So it's a challenge to those people to actually take on the new era of digital management of data. I'm not going to go through all these particular challenges that the industry faces. We've mentioned a number of them this morning, collaboration being one of them, communication. Everybody thinks of the project brief as something different. And here we are trying to deliver BIM. Lack of skills, lean construction, all good things which we're doing, which BIM will actually help deliver. But what you have to realise is that all the contracts, or most of the contracts that we're using at the moment, are all cobbled together, they're all outdated. They're not there really to help us deliver BIM, so there needs to be a new suite of documents. It is a change management process. If it's not hurting, it's not working. The reality is it will cause problems because management have to change. Management have to address the process they're managing the people. And the reality is it's not the technology that's the issue, it's the people. My role really is a cross between, well, I think I call it as marriage guidance counsellor sometimes, or a United Nations peacekeeper. Because the reality is some of the questions I get asked are fundamental engineering or coordination issues, which I can't actually believe that people are actually asking me. But that's the reality. I actually acquired this image from Autodesk probably 5 years ago. And I use this to explain to people because we have to give inductions to everybody on the project because there's people arriving all the time. So we're doing it. We've been doing it over for the last 2 years. And they have to understand that BIM is a process. They think that BIM is you get it out of a box. That's probably past good salesmanship from certain software vendors. However, it isn't. You can employ different technologies over this period in each one of those sectors. The reality is that clients have to get their head around is that the market is being driven by what's been going on here at the design and construct stage. And the rest of the technologies around this part of it have actually are still being developed. The market has been confused their pants off because software vendors have come along and delivered them 4D. And the contractors thought, oh, I've got BIM. So there's been a confusion in that marketplace. What this image also shows is that 5 years ago, Autodesk didn't have anything in there about field BIM. There's nothing here about ERP, how you're managing the asset. They've actually bought that technology over the last couple of years. So we've had to explain to people that, look, in the construction arena, that technology is never ever going to be perfect, and we're trying to push this forward. Things are still evolving. But the meaning for the BIM on this project is that it is a process of generating and managing digital information during an asset's life cycle. Because it's the asset owner that's going to take hold of this data. Yes, there was a BIM execution plan created before I arrived on the project. I had various discussions with the project director before I could get over to Australia. The consultants spent 4 months pulling this execution plan together, only for me to find when I came over here that they were all doing their own thing. The BIM execution plan as well only delivered a consultant's view of BIM. It is the missing part of the jigsaw from the point of view of any project, but it has to deliver what it is the deliverable that's going to be delivered at the end of the project, or the end deliverable that either the client or the contractor is looking to achieve out of it. Collaboration is probably the biggest challenge to the industry that BIM is going to present. And part of that reason is Revit, unfortunately, because it causes the issue where you've got a constant live model and all the 2D documentation are only a snapshot in time. We've got Aconex on the project, and that manages, and probably robustly enough for an upload and a download process, but I've had to introduce a manual process based on BS 1192, which is a work in progress, shared and published sort of arrangement, which people can actually manage the model files to. And it's about getting those people to work together better, collaborating on this process, and then applying those tools to support a collaborative working. And collaboration means different things to different people. I've had to explain to the team what Revit is really all about. What's the benefits of Revit? Getting people to actually understand that it's an object-based data, basically where contractors should be spending more time actually managing from their supply chain where that content's coming from. And try and get people to actually understand the relationship between Revit and Lego. I mean, it actually provides the structured data that we've been looking for ages. The other issue that we've had on the project and why we've supported Bim Execution Plan and why we've enforced the ANZRS standard on the whole project is that when I first came over, I talked to all the main medical suppliers in the country, and none of them had heard of Revit, none of them had even heard of Bim. But these are big players that are actually worldwide. So I said to them, do you speak to your international counterparts? And no. Communication. 6 months later, they all start coming back. Oh, I've got this Imperial Library I've got from the States. Can you use it? Blah, blah, blah. It's too late. The architects had to build another lot of content. So we've had to build all the content on the project. We support our ANZRS standard because it's been adopted by 80 countries worldwide. We support Bim Execution because if all the participants here today went back to their companies and actually supported Bim Execution and actually understood why they need to support Bim Execution and push their manufacturers and their supply chain to actually have compliant data, you would revolutionise the industry overnight because it forces accuracy into what you're doing. And there's some of the issues that we've had and we've had to address with the design team. Pushing the wrong button. One of the important things that I've had to reinforce with HY and Leighton's is that if there's a business process, you have to have a business strategy. And the reality is you have to involve your whole supply chain because it's not necessarily the cheapest price anymore. It's the fact of what is your supply chain going to do for you? What data can they provide to make your lives easier? And that's why one of the fundamental reasons that we promote and push Bim Execution. I spent nearly 5 years in the UK trying to convince CIBSE to actually get their act together and actually come up with a Bim Execution library. And they couldn't get their head around it. They couldn't get their head around it. I know they've come up with the National Object Library now, but this was probably about 10 years ago. But the reality is, BIM is a business process. You need to involve everybody in that process. We've set up everything on the project to try and improve the communication, the data collaboration. I've tried from day one to actually tell people, look, this is a big project. Don't get distracted by that. This has all been done before. The reality is that's a Lang O'Rourke job back in the UK. Everything was prefabbed off-site. It's all been coordinated, fully coordinated in the model. That is London and Barts. There's nothing new that we were doing on this project other than the fact that people were using new tools. Yes, we're implementing clash detection. Yes, we've fought like hell to get people to use the Navis model in their meetings. And I'll go on about that a little bit again in a minute. Spatial coordination, I could talk about this subject all day. It means different things to different people. Coordination is not spelt C-O. Cop-out. The reality behind coordination, to me, is if you're going to coordinate, you coordinate. It's about as much effort to actually get it right as it is to get it wrong in a lot of instances. But the amount of data that we have on this project, we're actually issuing to the client functional area 3D models with the state deliverables to actually get them to go and look at the 3D before they actually go on site. Because the terms and conditions was that they wanted the original file format plus a PDF. Well, if we'd had to give them all the Revit models, they'd have had to have a team as big as ours to actually manage it. So we actually forced them, well, I don't say forced them, we had negotiated with them, this is some of my soft skills coming out, the fact that they could do the same with a Navis model. So we loaded up, I've lost count the amount of Navisworks Freedoms we loaded on their laptops. Do you think they've opened them? Probably not. But they get a virtual model with all the FF&E and all the medical equipment in every time they have a discrete package. So our motto here really is build it twice, once in the computer, once on site. We still strive for that objective. Coordination management. The reality is we try to call clash detection something else. Everybody gets hung up about clash detection. Oh, it picks up thousands of errors. We've got to then manage it. It's been a learning curve for people. We call it coordination management because the biggest challenge is actually getting the people who make the decisions to go and look in the 3D model. It is too late for people out there to wait for the drawings to drop on their desk. So we've just now, recently, we've trained up another 30 management, that's either design managers or people who are not hands-on with Navisworks Manage. We might only get 50% of those people additionally accessing the models that are all sitting on the shared drive. But it's in our strive to get people to go into the model, to actually comment and actually make, and review the data before the drawings come out of it. And that is an important part of actually evolving the BIM process. We've actually got design managers now trained up to look at the Navisworks data and check the architect is his drawings actually are the same as his partition models. The fact that the schedules that come out of his partition models are the same that's what's in the model. And all the drawings and schedules and the models actually tie up. And we've colour-coded the various walls and the fire ratings and the doors to even check that the door schedule and the door schedule matches what is on the door schedule. So it's a whole evolution. If you'd like to play that now, the consultants never adopted 4D and 5D, but we've done it anyway. We've implemented VCO to help us do 4D sequencing. One of the benefits of it is flow lining that gets out of it. Unfortunately, we're contractually obliged to deliver it in Primavera anyway, so we did 2 systems. But this just goes to show the Revit data straight out of the structural models into VCO very, very easily. Helps us plan it. We've used Timeline or Simulate to actually break down all the slabs. And I'm showing you this because it's an important point now in the construction, because we're now linking data to each one of these pour slabs and each one of these columns. We've tested the facade program. Each one of these colours represents a different work package. So we're just trying to use the tools that's out there to actually prove to the team that the program and the process works. We've used this recently to prove there are 60 modules in level 1, which weigh between 4 and 6 tonnes each. And we've used this process to actually prove that those modules work and they come together and they can be installed in the right sequence. We've used 5D estimating and bill of quants. However, we've used it as an investigation. We were never, ever going to be using it as estimating from day one because we were building the content. We weren't getting the right structured content from the design team to have anything reliable come out in the estimating. We are now doing estimating, but we're actually doing it from our database. We used it as a business investigation to see how well the system or the software VCO stood up. What were the benefits? What were the holes in it? How we could move it forward on the next project. So it's been a quite interesting exercise. Off-site manufacture, again, backing up what Stephen was saying this morning. I've tried to reinforce to the services consultants that when you start to use Revit, you can't use it as you did CAD. You have to look at what the differentiator is. And what I mean by that, I've been involved with businesses in the UK which have gone out of business because they've tried to use Revit as a 2D world. They've never changed the way they manage the system. It's called design for manufacture. And those companies that have adapted and actually looked at how they need to change manage and actually use a system to actually bring the manufacturing into the design process are the ones that have actually still got more work in a recession and the ones that make themselves a differentiator. So the industry has to decide. And that's what we're finding on the NRI, is you have to decide as a consultant what it is that you are going to be delivering. Whether you are going to be a traditional consultant, because if you're going to offer a LOD 200, it's got to be coordinated. It's got to be coordinated to a level. I won't go any more than that. It's got to be coordinated. And that's the challenge. We've integrated the engineering services team into the project. These are some of the views of some of the lower levels that have been created. And the level of detail that's now being produced by the team is fairly good. And the collaborative process that's going on behind that is immense. Because here there's this federated model. I've said the number of Revit models that we have. And of course, each of the different disciplines is modelling and doing the coordination, so it's going round and round in circles. It's not, back in the UK, I hate to keep on running, but there are contractors that do the single, they offer a total solution. They do all the services coordination. So we have the additional challenge here where each of the services guys are coordinating and they've got to manage that process. And that is a difficult challenge. These are some of the examples that where we're at the moment. We're still striving to improve it. This is a collection, a snapshot of some of those modules that I was talking about earlier in the animation. 6 tonnes to be delivered on site with the pipe work loaded on. I'm not going to say any more, Craig, because it might steal your thunder tomorrow. What we've also done is that we've taken the bold step. I've been given the opportunity to develop the Bim strategy. And we've implemented Field Bim. Now, already been mentioned earlier about the digital setting out. We've probably got more total stations on site now than we've got people. The actual site labour force has actually adapted them and moved over to them very, very easily. I think David's done a good job at ShorePoint. That actually presents other challenges in reality. But we've adopted the iMotion tablet because of the amount of data we've got on this project and we don't know where the journey is going to take us. We're already starting to investigate how we can use the 3D data that the consultants and the contractors are doing to actually set up virtual simulation of all the key areas that basically we want to educate the site team on in detail of how they're all going to be split down and how the installation sequence is going to take place. So we don't reinvent the wheel on site. We've actually set up a new system. We've called it Spotnik. And the reason we've done that is because we have to stop ramming BIM down people's throats. The project director is a great one for actually having a name for another project within a project. So we've called it Spotnik, Single Point of Truth, Neuron Information Centre. And the reason we've called it Spotnik is one of the vehicles, one of the engines that we've got in there was Archer. That's been now renamed Zeus. And we wanted to keep it. And there may be other modules that we bolt in as we go along. Who knows? I'm not going to say anything just yet. But the reality is we're working very closely with them to actually develop and actually push this part of the industry forward. A single login that would actually take us to a 3D hub. So in that 3D hub, we can then access the parts of the work breakdown structure that we actually want the people to go to directly into the 3D model to lead them to the information that we want them to access. We've also got we'll have an offline part for when we have to resynchronize and the tablets on site. We'll also have an online, which is on the cloud, which is for iForms and reports. This is what we call iForms, is intelligent forms. And these are really databases and specification driven that we link into the model. And I'll go on about that a bit in a minute. The reason why, if you've got a large project, you've got lots of Revit data, you need to manage that Revit data. It took me over 10 months to get a BIM database management system such as Archer originally in place. It should have been in place from day one. But what we needed it for was because we found that the architect had designed the hospital 7,000 square metres oversize. If you've got a facility and you've got all this data coming in, just remember, the people who manage the data are going to be king. We now have a system set up that we can actually manage all the functional areas and actually check area by area on that project that it actually complies with the bid as that data comes in. We can also use it to actually colour code in the model red any item of FF&E which is not in the baseline document. So this is starting to deliver the benefits of really what BIM is about. It's been able to use that data for other things within your deliverable and management. As I mentioned earlier, Spotnik is based on the fact that we're delivering it to a work breakdown structure, so that when we force people into the system, we're not actually giving the site team access to the full drawing register on Aconex. They've actually got to go in through the 3D hub into the area of the model. So they come in, so they work out, first of all, whether they're going to be working on the fit-out area, that's just the structure or just the facade. And then they access the bit of the model that they want to go and look at. When they go into there, they can click on an area or click on a room, and it takes them to the 2D drawings that's been issued for that particular room. It also links to the objects. We can link individual documents to one object now. We've developed with Zeus a functionality to, if, for instance, if you're pouring with 10 columns, we can populate all the ITPs, or that ITP that's relevant to all 10 columns at the same time. And it will give us the document management as we go through the process, because really Spotnik is about managing the completion data. It's about adding to the model basically as a placeholder all the information from managing the QA to the operating and maintenance to the test and commissioning and to handover. And when you go in there, because we've set everything up by sector, by level, you can start to drill down. So you get all the information. This is giving you a demonstration of what's available from a fit-out point of view. But you then can drill down and you can go in. And what will be set up here is for every room in this area, there will be a view that's saved that takes you straight to that view. So you can then, if you don't want to see everything, you just drill down to the services. You can then just look at the architectural, or you can just look at the FF&E, because all the FF&E is in the model. The other thing that we're setting up right as we speak is we're using barcodes as wayfinding to actually link documents directly to each panel. So from an ITP point of view and from a tracking point of view. So when we get the delivery on site from Port Adelaide, basically we get a CSV file that updates the model, and it actually colour codes the panels in the model, so we can see from graphically what we've got on site, what's been installed, what's had a certified, and what's been signed off. So there is a colour coding system being set up, as well as linking the documents to that process. If you'd like to play this video. This is a very short video just to demonstrate what we've set up. So we've got set up a concrete pour card system, which actually brings a specification into the environment. And the reason why we've done this is because the feedback we were getting from the industry is that there is an issue from the educational angle, from the point of graduates coming out of college, are very clued on from a point of view of computers, but they don't like reading specifications. So we've actually set up a system which is basically a big checklist, and depending on what they answer, it actually prompts them with the next question. So we can actually concrete cure card system in there, and a sign-off if the contractor hasn't issued his ITP. So we've thought about the system, and it's taken us a long time. So if you think rolling out design and construction BIM from a point of view of the 3D model is hard, you wait till you set foot on site and try and roll out field BIM and try and change the way that people have been working on site for years. I've told all the senior construction managers on the project, when they leave the project in 2016, the industry is going to be in a totally different space. So embrace, move on. We've got inspection reports linked into the concrete pour card system. It can be used independently. You can click on an object in the sector model and it will bring up the drawings. think that finished a bit. Do you want to go back? Yeah. Yeah, so basically we can actually drive what the information is that we want the site team to have access to. One of the benefits that all this data collection actually gives us is we get free reporting. So we can not only track, view, and view site progress, we can set the models up so that it tells us where they are and what they poured. And that is all linked to the individual subcontractors' ITPs. We also get intelligent reports, progress reports, which are dynamic. We can set up automated notifications of certain information that comes in if we want some of the construction team to action behind, whether it's an inspection report or whether it's a link to the model. So the reality of the field BIM is it gives us access through the 3D data hub, but it gives us that extra power to actually provide additional information and capture the completion data as early as as really early in the project. So lessons learned. And one of the reasons why that I accepted the role with Building Smart and AIA is that the industry needs consistent BIM documentation. You need to get involved. There is now 3 working groups being set up with on the National BIM Initiative for Australasia. The IPD working group, Tom is involved steering as a steering group chairman. There's the BIM guidelines, and then there's the product manufacturers. They're all key parts of moving and helping the industry be collaborative. There's lots of good initiatives going on in the industry, and I could see that from day one when I arrived here. But the one thing that I learned from getting involved in this same process in the UK is until the industry demonstrates that it can be collaborative itself and start pushing in the right direction, no government is going to take you seriously. And that's what Paul Morrell told us. And that's one thing that I've learned, and that's why I feel it's key for us to actually get benefits out of where we're going in the industry today. You have to have some standards, methods and protocols that clients can actually hang a deliverable around, the contracts around that can deliver those deliverables, matched up with an execution plan. We've actually changed. I'm already involved with HY, learning off the lessons learned. We've got another project that we've set up, and I'm helping the project manager, who's here today, learn from the lessons learned on another project. And we're changing the way that the design team actually works. Technology will actually change that process from the point of view the structures now take ownership of the structure model, and they do all the setting out. We forced the supply chain into the process much earlier. The reason for this is that this technology basically provides transparency. If an architect is the lead coordinating consultant, he's got to be the lead coordinating consultant, not spend half the project trying to get out of the role, because he will get caught out. It will also show where there's been lack of discipline within the industry, because you're actually managing data. And as I said, when we're now analysing all these lines of code, we can see what's going on or what's not going on. So it's very, very key that you actually get your head around it. It's really data management. It's about coordination QA, how you actually set that process up, how you manage that process. Most of the consultants didn't appreciate that. Although they thought they were clever, oh, look, we're going to sign up, yes, we're going to do the project, but we're going to sign up and we're going to sit behind our firewalls in the same office. They then had to post, they then had a version of the federated model on each of their servers, and they've had to post, upload and download for our Aconex all the time, all their files. Now, the resources that has taken and the QA process behind that to check that, no one ever appreciated. the amount of discipline that that takes within the industry. So we've had to identify champions. We've had to involve everybody. You have to have supply chain partnering. And fundamentally, we continually strive to educate our team and promote the awareness. And furthermore, how do we get there? We have to promote a we approach. It's not how each discipline wants to do it. This is not how I do it. Everybody sitting here today can actually recognise somebody in this picture, either whether it's your company or whether it's your project team. All people doing something, they want to do something different. You have to remind them that it's a we approach. And that's where the benefits start to come in BIM. The efficiencies out of that we approach. The consistency of data out of that approach. The analogy I use to BIM, because it's a business, is basically the loyalty card that came out 15 years ago in the retail industry. They didn't know why they bought out the retail card, but they started capturing your data. They now know what you're going to buy before you go there. The reality is you're capturing data for your clients. You will understand their needs and understand. That's why partnering within BIM has started to take off, certainly in the US and certainly the UK. Because once the supply chain and the investment in time has gone into the supply chain, it's in everybody's interest to keep that moving forward. So just think of it as a loyalty card. Our aims and objectives, yes, it's the reduction of waste. If we could save a small percentage of the potential savings of 12%, now that 12% is the reworking cost of an average of 161 Australian projects. So on a £1.8 billion project, even if we can save 1%, we'd have paid for everything that we're doing on the BIM front. Improved coordination. We still strive for that improved coordination. It's taken us time, but we're getting there. Better design fit for purpose. We need to be, as an industry, much more data focused. We need to integrate the supply chain if you're a contractor, and clients need to drive that. It's a better management of risk because you can actually see the issues, you can actually deal with the issues much earlier. It needs to drive program efficiencies by actually simulating what the construction is much earlier. It will provide greater cost certainty, and everybody benefits. One of the biggest aims and objectives we have on the project is to drive change in the South Australian construction industry, and I believe that we're getting somewhere down there. Do you want to play the last? Okay, some of you might have seen this before, but the reality is that we did this video probably 18 months ago, as when we first identified what our BIM strategy was going to be. And I actually think that 18 months later, we're a fair way down the objectives that we set ourselves on this particular project to achieve with our project team and the supply chain. We tried to demonstrate that we needed to use the data from the 3D models for analysis, sun studies. We didn't start again. We used the data for seismic structural analysis to actually prove that the building could withstand the requirements. We got everybody involved in the collaboration process. And then we looked at downstream activities from the point of view of what the data then could be used for and how we needed to deliver it. We were never ever going to achieve 100%, but I think that what we have achieved is credit to the team, while I still strive to achieve that little bit extra. Nearly there. We even had to set the boardroom up for education training sessions so that we ensured that everybody got training on the right relevant software. I think it is actually. It's on the SAHP website. And that's it. Thank you very much.